I do want to bring into the program now of Fox 5's Lisa Evers, who has been joining us really every week to talk about the progress of this race. And Lisa, another week, a lot more to talk about.
There's so much to talk about, Carel, and it's crazy because none of it really seems to have to do with the actual issues that are affecting New Yorkers, which we're finding is number one is the whole affordability issue is very serious. Public safety, of course, a strong concern. We just heard former Governor Cuomo talking about how he wants to hire 5,000 police. That's a great idea. I don't think a lot of people would object to that. But how are you going to pay for that with the current state of the economy here and also without raising taxes? And then you have the whole specter of he's constantly addressing Mamdani. It's been such a peculiar race because almost since the beginning, Carel, they first started doing these polls, no matter who was doing the poll, the results, and no matter how large the size of the sampling, the results have always been the same with these top four. You have Mamdani in the latest New York Times Siena College poll. I just double checked with it. Mamdani is at 46%. Cuomo is about half that at 24%, which has been fairly consistent, give or take a couple points on either side. Sliwa at 15, the Republican candidate, he's actually doing better than the Democratic incumbent Mayor Adams, with only 9%. He's barely budged. I think at most of the polls had him at like 7 or 8% at one point. So it's very unusual because in so many elections in the past here in New York City, whoever was the Democratic nominee, it was automatically a shoo-in to become mayor. Whoever was the incumbent, they had a tremendous advantage in order, in the next mayoral race. But that's not what's happening here. We see Adams dead last out of all four of them behind a Republican candidate, which is pretty incredible. You have an incumbent Democratic mayor running behind a Republican candidate in a city that is overwhelmingly Democrat. And then you have the whole issue of Mamdani, which has just galvanized people. And we've seen to what former Governor candidate Cuomo was saying just a few minutes ago here on Live Now. He was saying basically, Mamdani is constantly changing his position. He's, he doesn't know what to say. He's trying to control the media. All of that seems to be true because, we just saw him. He was famous for several years ago talking about he wanted to have the defund the police, take police away. But as he started to go out more in the community and be out in these, talking to voters one-on-one. And also keep in mind, he has a massive ground game too. This isn't just they're trying to make it sound like it's a social media campaign with him, that he has all of these followers and it's off TikTok and it's off Instagram and Twitter, X. But the reality is he also has a ground game. He posts on his X every week. He's got tens of thousands of people going out throughout New York City, door to door canvassing, trying to convince people, wary New Yorkers who are like, wait a minute, we do not want socialist grocery stores in our boroughs. We want economic growth. We want prosperity. We want to be able to afford to go out to dinner without having to decide which part of our budget we're going to have to fall short on just to do that, to maybe celebrate somebody's, one of the family members' birthdays. So I think Mamdani, that, he's just become a focal point, such a huge focal point for this. And it's really, candidates are attacking him, but then on the other hand, people are talking about Cuomo. He's got a lot of baggage, but one thing he can do. He is an executive. If he puts his mind to it, he can get things done. But if they were really talking about the issues, Cuomo's talking about crime, but he's the one that signed into law the bail reform bill that is still causing us so many problems here with these repeat offenders committing more and more crimes, just like we saw this past week with a Queens couple in their 70s, lifelong New Yorkers. I was out there all day on Tuesday. This man and his wife who lived in this neighborhood for years. I mean, practically every house with an American flag hanging from it. Real solid New Yorkers, proud Americans. And this is the couple, the Altons, right here, doing a good deed to somebody, saying, "Give me your phone charger, I'll take it inside." Mr. Alton did, and instead, according to what detectives telling us now, the suspect pushes his way into his house, and then for the next 5 hours tortured him, and God knows what all he did to his wife. But they both ended up being being burned, fatally burned. And this is the suspect, Jamel McGriff right here, career criminal. did 16 years for an armed robbery, level 3 sex offender who did not register, who should not even have been on parole, and yet he was checking in as parole officer, and that system didn't catch him. But back to this issue of crime. So those are the kind of things that, could be real issues. Like in past campaigns, candidates would have seized on such a shocking crime, even for New York City, and have said, "Oh, start pointing blame over who's responsible for that," and that isn't happening. They're just kind of stuck in this endless cycle, this kind of like a repeat cycle of attacks on Mamdani, and it's just who knows where it's going to go.
And that's something that we touched on last week, and where it's like the focus right now and all the headlines, they surround these attacks from these candidates at each other. Lisa, let's break down a little bit the interest that President Trump has on this race as well. I want to put up this post here. This is courtesy of Rapid Response 47 on X. And so they show here a little clip of President Trump on Fox and Friends earlier this week. And they quote him saying, President Trump on Zoran Mamdani, quote, "I call him my little communist." What can we make of this, Lisa? What is President Trump trying to say with this race? Why is he so invested?
Well, he's invested for a lot of reasons, but one thing, when he gives a quote, it's a quote. It's a quote that you're just not going to be able to ever get out of your mind, and it's so plain spoken. He's my little communist, which is really kind of dismissive of Mamdani, like, hey, my little communist, not just like this like Cuomo called him a terrorist sympathizer and a socialist and all of this, which he admits to being a socialist. But I think for President Trump, Mamdani tried to be, the one throwing rocks at the White House and at the president early on. He said just a couple of weeks ago, and I believe we talked about it, Carel, he said, you know what, I want to debate President Trump, get rid of the middlemen, which meaning Adams and Sliwa. I want to debate President Trump in every borough of New York City. He wanted 5 one-on-one debates. Well, President Trump already has a job. He won the national election by a landslide. He's not running for mayor of New York City, but of course, President Trump, this is his home state and his home city, so he's very vested in it. The Trump name is omnipresent here in New York, especially in Manhattan. And I think that Mamdani was trying to show the National Democratic Party, hey, I'm not just your local guy. And when he started, with that "I'll debate Trump," people were saying, wait a minute, are you using the New York City mayor's race just to get a profile and some political experience so you can then run for president right around, or are you really interested in this job? So it kind of backfired on him in some ways, but in other ways it had no effect on his supporters. President Trump is unhappy about the economy here. He's unhappy about the level of a lack of cooperation with the federal government. He's unhappy, and all this has been expressed over the last weeks and months, unhappy with the way that the city is going. And I think as he looks around the country and he's like, these big urban areas, they're still, they are still the engines. They're still very important pieces of the American economy and also internationally. So they need to be strong. And I think that, for Mamdani, he wanted to show the Democrats have the Democratic Party, as we know from their own admissions, is in a shambles. They're still trying to find out who is that person that we can get that can galvanize crowds of tens of thousands like President Trump has throughout all of his campaigns, fill auditoriums, fill arenas, fill fields, all of that. And they feel like it might be Mamdani. And that's why there was this, we saw Bernie Sanders here with him. We saw AOC coming to town, making a rare appearance, I might add, in New York City, which she supposedly represents part of the Bronx. I mean, she does represent part of the Bronx. And I think that it's just, it's just that he's an easy figure for everybody to latch on to, because he doesn't have that much of a track record. He's been an assemblyman for a very short amount of time, not that much experience really doing too much of anything else, and people are seizing on that.
I'm interested, though, Lisa, because, we're seeing the polls, we're seeing the headlines. Mamdani is up ahead from all of the other candidates. But what are we really hearing from New Yorkers down there on the ground? Do these poll numbers really reflect how people really feel, or is it a bit more muddy?
Well, I think it's a little muddy, but it's also, I kind of go by, because during the week I'm out in the streets reporting the various neighborhoods and communities, and people know us from, me from Fox 5. and they'll be like, Lisa, what about this Mamdani? I just can't believe he's going to be the one that's going to be the mayor. Like, that's from Democrats. And they'll say they have tremendous reservations about him. They don't know what the real plan is, what is the real plan? I mean, when Michael Bloomberg came into office after 9/11 and everybody thought New York City was gone forever, would never come back. The economy was in shambles. Businesses left, residents left, people were gone. Wall Street was doing had to do most of its work out in New Jersey and remote. And I think that, he came in. He had a plan. His plan was, look, this is what we're going to do. We're going to get the economy stable. And then we're going to focus on education so that we're creating a workforce in these areas. There's no reason why more than half of New York City or about half of New York City public school students never graduate high school. Out of 1 million, that's a lot of people. And then try to find jobs, and there's no jobs for them because they're not properly trained. So I think with this whole situation, it's just people hear the name. He seems likable enough when, as his, in terms of his presentation, just an immediate thing. He's got the tremendous media presence, but then people, especially the long-term residents here, are very leery about what exactly is he going to do. This tax the rich. Governor Hochul said we can't tax the rich any more than we already are because they're going to leave New York. Well, P.S. Newsflash, many have already left New York in the last several, really since the pandemic. There's been a flight, and he just doesn't have, what's his economic program? Socialist grocery stores. Those didn't work in Cuba. Are they really going to work in the Bronx or really work in Brooklyn? It's just, how about keeping the grocery stores and the bodegas and the corner stores and the convenience stores that we have open, maybe giving them some kind of incentive so that they can stay open and keep their workers employed. It's just, we're not on the issues, and that's one of the big issues. You're asking about issues. People, affordability is really the number one issue, followed by a close second, I would say, by public safety. And that's just from what we're seeing in terms of interest, in our stories online and also out in the communities, Carel.
Lisa, just one final question here. We still have a few weeks left up for this race. I'm going to put up some of the video that we have here that I've been showcasing throughout. There's still 4 candidates in it, so it's a very saturated pool when it comes to New York City mayor. Is it too early to be able to, I don't know, narrow it down to 2 of them possibly?
Well, the overtures from President Trump were rebuffed by both flat out by Sliwa and by Adams, and it was almost as if they kind of were like, we're going to show you where we are in this to win this, and double down with more campaign events and being out there even more. And then this week there was an interesting thing where President Trump went to the Yankees game, on 9/11 in the tradition of George W. Bush, and after 9/11, and he was in the same borough, and Adams was at another event in the Bronx but didn't make time, or if you believe the multiple reports, he couldn't fit it in his schedule to meet with the president. And that from that Fox and Friends appearance that we were talking about, where he called Mamdani as my little communist, it seems like the president is like, okay, look, the attitude seemed to be, we made overtures. I'm trying to get both of them out, get them out. He believed Cuomo could beat Mamdani, but now it sounds as if from that interview that even the president is not sure, even if the other 2 were gone. And he's got a lot of other things on his plate right now to have to, to deal with. And then, of course, next week, may he rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. There's the big memorial for him that the president will be going to. So, but to answer your question, with less than 2 months to go, I still think there could be something else that's the defining moment. What is the defining moment? Will there be 1 or 2 defining moments? Will there be something unearthed in Mamdani's background that people don't know about? Comments that he's making, or anti-Semitic remarks, or that type of thing. And there've been some pretty damaging ones already, that he's made, and some associations that are really very, very questionable and would make a lot of New Yorkers uncomfortable. So I think there is a chance that this ranking, which has kind of pretty much been the same all the way through, that might start to change. It's like, Will Mamdani, he's the new guy, people clearly want change, and that I think is a big part of his allure. Is not so much that they think he's a genius or that he's going to be a great leader or anything like that, but people are just they're just sick of the status quo. They saw the tax money going to house undocumented migrants and give them cash cards, phones, all kinds of resources that the average New Yorker or low income person on public assistance would be unable to get, was unable to get. And all of these types of things. And then the lack of cooperation with the federal government. The feds came in and said, listen, you're arresting people. If they're undocumented, we'll take them off your hands. You don't have to pay tax money to house them on Rikers Island or whatever. That was not done. And it's just this very very tough relationship. And I think the president's moving on to other things and resign. But if Mamdani does win in New York City, I think there's going to be we'll see how easy his reign is, because the city depends on a lot of federal money for a lot of programs, and just to even run something like the public housing program here, which is which provides homes to almost 500,000 New Yorkers. So there's it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I wouldn't say it's over until the last ballot's counted and until it's actually certified. Carel.
We'll have to see, Lisa, then for that defining moment, like how you just said. We still have a few weeks to go, so we look forward to having you back here, continuing to break it down, because no shortage of headlines with this mayoral race. Lisa Evers, live for us down there, Fox 5 New York. Thanks for your time.
All right, thank you so much.
Of course, you take care.